Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope your weekend's off to a great start. Thanks for joining us. Yesterday, Deshaun Watson, at the opening of his lefty cheesesteaks in Cleveland Heights, said he expected to be ready for week 1 of the NFL season. Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk reacted to that today.
Okay, it's one thing to be ready for week 1. It's another thing to be on the field week 5, 10, 15, playoffs. That's what Deshaun Watson has to prove. And the pressure is on him greater than ever. This is part of the problem with the contract that he got. It increases pressure, expectations, criticism if you're not delivering. This is prove-it year. I can't say it's up or out because they're stuck for 2 years beyond this. But, at some point, Miles, you have to wonder whether they just say, and it would take a lot this year for them to get to that point, but if he has 2 more subpar years, I wouldn't be surprised if come year 5 they do the Russell Wilson thing and just say see you later, and he goes somewhere else, makes the league minimum, and the Browns pay him the difference, just like the Broncos are going to pay Russell Wilson the difference between $1.21 million and $39 million fully guaranteed this year.
With that, let's welcome in G. Bush from 92.3 The Fan, the ultimate Cleveland sports show. He's been hurt. I like Mike Florio. I think he's very knowledgeable. Deshaun Watson was hurt. He was suspended. He was hurt. That's why he hasn't been productive.
Yeah, I think people sometimes, being a person who's had 17 surgeries in their lifetime from football, I still have 3 herniated discs in my neck that are not operable. I have back surgery, 2 knee surgeries, 2 ACLs, PCL, all that good stuff. I don't even count the scopes. But, a person who's had those surgeries, I've have a unique perspective that, understands that no player signs up to get hurt. And, this is a game of football where people play a very violent game. Guys that are faster than world sprinters and guys that are bigger than, WWE wrestlers are really legitimately crashing into people every single play for about 60 to 70 snaps. So when people talk about Deshaun Watson, it's as if he needs to make his mind up that he's not going to get injured. Newsflash, for all those who have never played or have never seen the game up to close and personal, you don't choose to get injured. Your body breaks down on you, and it is what it is. So, for them to act as if Deshaun Watson is he really feels like he wants to be injured or he has any control over that. You can't control if you break an arm, a leg, tear a ligament. You can't do any of that. Another thing too is I had the opportunity to be out there at his grand opening of Lefties, and what I came away with was this. There's so many people that we watch and we look on Twitter, and your Twitter followers and some of the national media, some of the things that they say. It gives you a bleak perspective on how many people really support Deshaun Watson and want him to progress, and how many people are backing him. I was there for the 3-4 hours, and you don't know how many people came up to me and said, we just really supporting Deshaun. We just came out there to support him. We think we'll have a great year. We supporting QB1. And it really turned, it changed the way I looked at some things. Twitter is a very popular thing, especially in our business. And we got talking heads and media guys all over the country who have opinions about the Browns, and they don't cover them every single day, or they're not as close to it as we are. And they have a perception, but the people here have a perception as well. And, I was very surprised, and it was kind of, a pleasant surprise that there are a lot of people out there that believe Deshaun Watson is going to have a great year this year. And a lot of people saying that there's a very small sample size. I mean, I repeat it all the time. I think he's played 11 games. I saw Brian Hoyer more, Brandon Wheaton more than that, Colt McCoy more than that. At some point in time, you got to give him a sustained period of time to see what he can do.
Yeah, I agree, especially at the quarterback position. So let's see if he can play 10 games back-to-back, 10 games in a row. Then we might see something. It's a game where you need the continuity without question. This from Total Pro Sports, ranking all 32 NFL teams as they prepare for the NFL draft. So they go Chiefs 1, 49ers 2. They have the Lions 3, which surprises me. Ravens 4, Eagles 5. They have the Browns ranked 8th. They only have 5 picks altogether, not to worry that much. Team is in win-now mode. That got even better with the acquisition of Jerry Jeudy, Jameis Winston, Tyler Huntley, savvy pickups to replace Joe Flacco. It is really just a matter of the Browns staying healthy. And that last line kind of encapsulates, think about all the injuries. They still made the playoffs a season ago. So they have all those guys coming back that they didn't have a season ago.
Yeah, even look up front. I mean, we had 2 guys off the street playing tackle. Like, you know, in a playoff run, a guy in Joe Flacco who, you know, was at his house, you know, watching games, and then he gets tapped on the shoulder and he comes out of semi-retirement and delivers. You know, we were missing our best offensive player, Nick Chubb, pretty much since day one. So we talked about this a lot. I think I will give credit to the list right there. I think he gives, sometimes you see these mid-season, reviews or the off-season reviews, rather, and they go in and they say, all right, well, we're going to rank the Browns 25th because we don't know what Deshaun Watson is going to do. At least at this position, they have him at 8. And I think he's correct, in the article. It's talking about, it comes down to, hey, if they can stay healthy, the Cleveland Browns are a top 10 team easy. And if you look at the AFC, the Cleveland Browns, if you look at the pecking order, they even have an opportunity to take a step up because they haven't played that well at the quarterback position. I mean, you look at it, Deshaun Watson has not played like he did in Houston. If Deshaun Watson is able to regain that form, the Browns are a team that can even elevate even more. We know what the rest of the league is at quarterback. We know what the Ravens are, and we know what some of these other teams who had good, consistent quarterback play are. The Browns made the playoffs with a bunch of people on an IR for the entire season. And I just think, if you get some of those guys back and you get Deshaun Watson doing what he does, coming off an 11-win playoff appearance, I think the Browns could be, one of the more dangerous teams in the league.
So, the trade for Deshaun Watson is one that has people scratching their head, talking, the contract. Here is why the Browns did it. These are the first quarterbacks taken in the last 10 drafts. And this, more than anything, will tell you, you can draft a quarterback, but you just don't know. So last year it was Bryce Young. Number 2 C.J. Stroud played pretty well 2 years ago. Kenny Pickett was the first quarterback taken. Trevor Lawrence has had mixed reviews. Joe Burrow, without question, that was a no-brainer. Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Mitchell Trubisky, Jared Goff, Jameis Winston, who's the backup here. And back to 2014, it was Blake Bortles. So, the draft process, what that tells you, once in a decade, once in the last 10 years, you have gotten a no-brainer with the number 1 overall pick, with the first quarterback who has lived up to what you thought he would be, and that's Joe Burrow. And that poor guy's been injured as much as anybody.
I'll commend the Browns for doing what they needed to do and going out and getting Deshaun Watson. You had a team that was in win-now mode. You had a team that was stacked offensively. You had a team that was built to win a championship now. And for all those people out there that are complaining about the salary cap, I just don't understand it. Like, the salary cap is like the national debt now. Like, it's just this thing that scares people into being like, you know what?
And it's going up. And it's just going up.
It goes up. It just keeps going up. And then after it goes up, they just sit around and say, well, you can't kick the can down the road forever. Sure you can. These people are printing money.
Yep.
They are the ones, the government's not coming out of thin air and saying, you owners, you better stop with that salary cap. They choose to raise it arbitrarily based on the revenue that they've gotten. And they're the richest league in the universe. So for me, when I take a look at people talk about the 234, or how much David Njoku got, or Jerry Jeudy isn't worth the extension, says who? You are worth what you get. It's money. If I am the Haslams, remember this, everybody sees their mortality. The Haslams are in their late 60s. Last time I looked at it, the average life expectancy for an American male is roughly 72 to 77. So that they're looking around like, it does us no good to be rich and not reach our goals and live out to see what we can get. It's only so many trips you can take, vacations you can take, and cars you can get. At the end of the day, it's your legacy. So if it's versus the Cleveland Browns winning the championship since '64, or keeping the money so we can stay financially conservative and solvent, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to overpay people. I'm going to print money. I'm going to continue to go out and get the best receivers because I'm already paying Deshaun Watson $234, and I'm going to be competitive. I'm going to be trying to be competitive as I can while I'm on this earth doing what I need to do. All the picks and all the good stuff, you got to have a quarterback. And when you go to the draft, it's a crapshoot. I laugh all the time. People will tell you, you know what, hey, we got to get our team better. We got to keep our quarterback upright. Let's go to the safest pick. Let's get an offensive tackle. Newsflash, people, tackles bust too. Newsflash, Mekhi Becton isn't any good. At the end of the day, the draft is not the land of milk and honey. You might need to augment your team some other ways. And I salute the Browns for going out and making that move.
And you know what? We did something a couple days ago. That salary that's, I think it's 200 or the 230 and it's 46 million. The 46 million isn't in the top 8 this year for quarterback pay. So that's how quickly it changes as well. All right, this from Dog Pound Daily. 3 players the Browns should extend beyond 2024 and 2 they should not. They say they should extend Tony Fields, linebacker, Amari Cooper, wide receiver, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker. They would not extend Jedrick Wills, left tackle, and Nick Chubb, running back. Fields, I'm intrigued by Fields. G. Bush, I want to see more of him. He hasn't been on the field enough. He's another guy that he can't seem to stay healthy. When he's on there, he does some good things. And I'm not, I know some people are much more down on Jedrick Wills. I still think he can be a pretty good left tackle.
Yeah, if you listen, they extended him, and sometimes you have a little thing where you don't know what you truly got to is gone. And last year was frustrating watching James Hudson and all the rest of the guys try to fill in, and that was one of the things that was made painfully obvious as the Browns got boat race against the Texans. You needed to upgrade the offensive line play. You needed to be able to run the ball better. And so Jed Wills is a guy who this is a very pivotal year for him, make or break. If he comes in and plays well, grades out, somewhere in the high 70s, low 80s, I think the Browns will bring him and extend him because, those guys don't grow on trees, right? So I think that's a great one. Now, in terms of the cutting of Nick Chubb or not extending Nick Chubb, it depends on how Nick Chubb looks coming back. But the reality of the situation is, we've been talking about the cap and who's going to be a casualty. And one of the first person's names brought up was Nick Chubb all the time. Like, hey, we can't. We're not going to be able to bring Nick back. We can't do this. I think that people don't understand the unique position that the Cleveland Browns are in with Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is a guy who, in my opinion, is an ambassador for your program, and I think you can't afford to have Nick Chubb going and ending up in a Steelers jerseys or Ravens jersey or any other jersey. At the end of the day, I think Nick Chubb is a wise individual. I think he does really well with his money, and I think that he will come to some sort of deal with the Browns that'll end his career as a Cleveland Brown. I think it's imperative because it shows the Browns are an organization that take care of their own. And for once, I would like to see our best player retire as a Brown, playing with one team like the Steelers and the Ravens have done with guys like Ray Lewis and guys like Ed Reed and guys like Ben Roethlisberger and Hines Ward, those guys. I want to see Nick Chubb end his career as a Cleveland Brown.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am with you 100%. G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out on the side of the break. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, turn our attention to the draft a little bit. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Play Maximum Millions and $2 million Ultimate Cash from the Ohio Lottery, and you may never look at scratch-offs the same way again.
We continue talking Browns with G. Bush from 92.3 The Fans, The Barbershop, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
One of the changes I'd like to see this season with Deshaun Watson is stop acting like a running back. I mean, he took a lot of major hits when he ran, and it seemed like he'd never slide and hesitated to run out of bounds. I'd see him taking off, and I'd yell, "Slide, son, slide. You're not a running back. Stop acting like a running back. You're going to get hurt." So at his age, can he be reprogrammed to slide, run out of bounds, and not take those hellacious hits that could injure him and put him on the sidelines? Go Browns. Woof, woof.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. G. Bush, it's a fine line. You can't take away, and you know, some of what makes him the player he is he's instinctive. But yeah, I'm with you. I do cringe when I see linebackers getting free shots at my quarterback.
Yeah, listen, I think some of it is play calling. Some of it when Deshaun got in and got back, you got to realize he hadn't played in over a year. He hadn't practiced. He had no training camp. So one of the things that, athletic quarterbacks and sometimes play callers do is they call design runs to get you acclimated, to get the blood flowing. Also, quarterbacks, if you haven't been playing in a while, you're not seeing the quick reads, you're not throwing the ball on time. If you hold the ball too long, then you're forced to scramble because either the pressure or that you just are more comfortable trying to move the sticks that way. So I think a lot in the first 2 years we saw with Deshaun Watson, he did the play call, the injury that he got hurt on against Tennessee. He was supposed to slide, but he was in the middle of the field. It's kind of awkward. And he ran a quarterback power play. He ended up taking a guy on with his throwing shoulder, which turned out to be a bad decision. And it pretty much ended his career. Or not his career, sorry, but it ended the rest of his year. So one thing that I say and always talk about is like, look, at some point in time, you got to have a level of awareness. And hopefully that level of awareness comes with, missing the most part of last year, watching your team have to go through a playoff run without you. And I think you can get mature and you can understand where your errors took place at. So for me, I hope he's more of along the lines that, hey, if I need to run, I could do it, but I need to get out of bounds. Hey, I'm going to run, but I'm going to slide. Hey, I'm going to run, but I'm going to run to look to extend plays to throw the ball downfield. Not so much of a guy who, and that go, we've seen it. I think we've been, almost in like a nightmare. We saw the same thing with Baker Mayfield, right? Like, hey, you threw an interception. Don't tackle the guy. We don't need – I know you're a competitor. Just let somebody else get this man on the ground. We do not need you to be hurt. So hopefully Kevin Stefanski and the coaching staff is talking to him and letting him know, hey, we need you all the weeks. So if it's between a 2-yard gain or a 5-yard gain, take the 2-yard gain, slide, and let's keep it moving.
All right, let's turn our attention to the draft. Browns currently pick 54th. Overall, second round. What position do you think they're looking at there?
To me, I still stay on the receiver roster. I still stay on that side of the football. There's guys. It's one of the deepest drafts that I've seen at receiver. Malachi Corey. You got Pearsall. You got Ladd McConkey. You got Troy Franklin. Xavier Legette. Adonis Mitchell, Xavier Worthy. They got a lot of guys. We haven't even got to the guys, Brian Thomas and guys like that, and Marvin Harrison Jr. And so, you got all of these guys that are coming into this draft. And I think when you look at the quarterback position, you're going to have teams that are looking to get up and get their quarterback. And people talk about how many quarterbacks could go potentially in the first round. I've heard different mock drafts up to 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round. And when there's a run on quarterbacks, and there's a really pretty good offensive line class as well, and mixed with the receiver class. That means there's 3 really deep positions. And so if you need offensive linemen, you need quarterback. You want a receiver, there's gonna be a point where there's a run in one of those positions, and I feel like that's gonna push down a receiver that you wouldn't normally get at 54 for the Browns, that you're gonna find sitting there on the board. I mean, if you're the Browns, we're not giving up by any stretch of the imagination on David Bell. We're not gonna give up on Cedric Tillman, but you got an opportunity to get a guy who may have a borderline late first round grade on him that's sitting in your lap that can be an upgrade with speed like Franklin or Xavier Legette and his athleticism, being able to be a physical receiver. So to me, I think the area opportunity the Browns can have is getting a fourth receiver, a guy that can mix. He'll play the X, Y, or the Z. All three positions, work in the slot, block pretty well, and get a guy on the field that is going to help you go with those three wide receiver sets with David Njoku or be a guy that can be a deep threat. So give me the best available you got at wide receiver. I think the Browns could go there. There may be an opportunity though if there's a tackle they like on the board though. Think about it. The tackles, Jed Wills last year, we talked about a little bit earlier. Conklin has been injured. DeJuan Jones looks like he's going to probably get one of those positions. If they draft one of those guys and sit him up and put him, behind some of those guys right there, they may be looking to say, hey, we may not bring back, Jed Wills, and we may go with the tackle we drafted this year.
All right, so ESPN's draft analyst Field Yates had an interesting one. His latest mock draft has the Browns at 54 taking running back Trey Benson, and they have Trey Benson ranked as one of the top, I think the top running back in the draft. So here is Yates explaining the thinking that would make the Browns take Trey Benson if he was involved in that pick.
You and I both agree, no running backs in the first round. Some might say, do the Browns really need a running back? Nick Chubb could eventually be back. Man, Mel, that's a major injury that he is coming back from. Major injury. And the Browns have said many times they expect him back at some point during the 2024 season. We don't know if that'll be week 1 or week 18. We have no idea. Meanwhile, there's going to be an acclimation period. And while Cleveland obviously has not reached the highest of highs in the playoffs of late, Mel, this team is very talented. There's not a bunch of holes on this roster. So I think there's a chance that Cleveland might say, hey,
explosive in this offense. So if they view Trey Benson as the best running back in this class and he's sitting there at 54, it'd be awfully hard not to take him.
Man, listen, I've been all over the airwaves. If you listen far and you listen near and close, I've talked about the project stockpile. I've talked about the Cleveland Browns not looking at how many people they got in the room, just keep getting better. They went and added coaches. They went and added assistants, and they added consultants like Mike Vrabel. They went out and got guys that were former Heisman Trophy winners and number 1 overall picks, Jameis Winston. Hey, Tyler Huntley was a guy who has played in the division, has had some experience, and he even went to a Pro Bowl. Right? They went and got Jerry Jeudy. I like the move of Deontay Foreman and making sure that they got somebody on the goal line to be a power back. Hines is another guy who was going to be return kicks and the new rules with the kick return stuff. So they've done a good job. But I'm at first I kind of scoffed at it, but I was just like you. I said, well, hold on, let me think about it. If I'm doing Project Stockpile and I'm looking at Nick Chubb, and I don't know, me have torn 2 ACLs before. I tore my ACL on left knee, tore my ACL on my right knee, tore a patella tendon off of my right knee. I know what it's all about to have knee surgeries, and one knee could be great. My left knee, it works. It's even better than it was before prior I injured it. But this right knee, I feel like I'm a 65-year-old man on that right knee. I got to have it drained all the time. I can't do things back-to-back days. Heck, I can't even walk on a treadmill 2-3 days in a row without me having to put some ice on it. So I know what it is to try to come back and play and realize that, hey, I need a lot of maintenance. I need maintenance days. I need days off. I need a lot of stuff on his knee. And the Cleveland Browns, it may sound harsh, they ain't got no time to wait on nobody. The train is moving. They got a small window. And if you can get Trey Benson, the best running back on the board that slid to 54, we talked about the receivers, we talked about tackle, we talked about quarterback, all deep places, all deep positions in this draft. There are going to be some real good football players at positions that you necessarily don't need sitting in your lap at 54. And if Trey Benson is there, sorry, he's Jerome Ford. We love you. You came from the Natty. You're a late round pick. This guy has first round talent. This guy's the best back on the board. And how energized would you ever be? It's nothing like fresh legs. And when you get these guys out of college with them fresh legs and they hit the hole just like that, that sets you up to be a team that is now doing like the best teams. You always ask, how the heck did the Steelers get that guy? How the heck did they fall to the Ravens? It might be the Browns' time to talk about how that guy fall to us.
G. Bush, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, G. Bush.
Appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
You too, G. Bush. Make sure you check him out. 8 until noon, 92.3 The Fans, The Barbershop. You can also catch him 11 to 1, Monday through Friday on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. We're going to take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Video analysis, film breakdown of some safeties the Browns may be looking at in this draft. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE NFL Draft. Only a few weeks away now. One area that the Browns may look to upgrade in the draft is the safety position. Time for a video analysis film breakdown. Whenever we do that, we welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Lance, always a possibility that if the Browns feel like a guy can play in the league, they go and do that in the draft. When you look at the safeties, what do you see?
Well, it's a position they're going to maybe have to address. McLeod today's coming back, but for one last ride, so he's probably got a year left. And then after them, they got after Delpit and Thornhill, they got Ronnie Hickman and DeAnthony Bell, two guys that are undrafted, and maybe I think they both played very well, but that's a position they may look to upgrade. What makes it really kind of fun if you're a player, but really hard to find if you're a coach or a GM, is the Browns safeties under Schwartz need to be really dynamic. In fact, they need to play inside the box. They need to have run fits. They need to cover multiple positions. They also need to play at the one high safety where they got to be able to cover deep and cover sideline to sideline. So it's a very dynamic position. It's a position that has a lot of roles. It's a position that's very hard to play at a high level. Schwartz has had some guys that could do that, but this is a position that's tough and a position they may look to upgrade in the draft.
We're looking at three guys that they could look at. First, Tyler Nubin, 6'1", 199 pounds, played in the Big Ten at Minnesota. What do you see with Nubin?
Well, Nubin's a guy who has great length, and you're going to see it here. So he's in two high hat. He's playing center field. He breaks on the ball very, very well. And what he does very well is he recognizes the route combination. There is a route in front of the safety to his right, and you're going to see the receiver, and then he jumps because he knows the route combination, what the quarterback's reading. He's reading the other safety, so he does a really nice job. Next, you're going to see him coming on a blitz. So you've got that Grant Delpit, right? So he can come on a blitz and does a great job of that. Next, you're going to see him inside the box, replacing that linebacker. Again, just a guy who can cover very well. He's got an explosive first step. I think he'll slide in the draft a little bit because he ran a 4.6, but he's football fast, and his understanding of the game allows him to play at full speed. And again, I've said it many times on the show, if you're thinking, your feet aren't moving. This is a very smart football player, played for PJ Fleck, so he understands what he's doing. He's a great tackler in space. He can blitz from multiple positions. He can cover multiple positions. And all three of these guys are guys that can do multiple things. This is probably the most versatile guy in the draft at the safety position, being able to play low and high, blitz, etc. So a guy Schwartz probably really likes.
Yeah, the main thing that jumped out to me, you mentioned his ability to tackle in space. When you have the defensive linemen that are getting upfield, those safeties and linebackers better be able to get sideline to sideline and tackle in space.
Yeah, and when you play on that second level, so I've always characterized as really not D linemen, linebackers, and safeties. I always characterize Schwartz defense as first level, second level, and third level. And those safeties have to play on the second and third level, and they have to do it at a very high level. They have to play at times as hard-nosed as a linebacker inside, and they have to be able to cover over the top. Sometimes they have to cover a slot. They have to cover a receiver. They have to do a lot of things, and they have to be very good at it all, or they get exposed, which you saw a little bit late in the season when you make a mistake.
So the next guy we're going to look at, Javon Bullard, 5'10", 198 pounds, University of Georgia. So played in the SEC. What do you see with Bullard?
Well, you're going to see here, first of all, it's a route combination. So Florida's going to go with 3 receivers to the top, so he doesn't have a threat. So he's able to come downhill. That's important. Next, you're going to see him set at the edge here. And what his job is, because the lineman's inside, he's got to make sure that back doesn't get outside. He doesn't tackling. And then next, what you see is him playing free safety, 3rd and 5 versus Vanderbilt. And Georgia's going to bring a 6-7-man pressure. So again, understands the route combination, doesn't need to backpedal here. What I really like on this next play is that he's going to fight outside here and use his hands and not get beat outside. That's very important. And then, obviously he can play over the top if needed. He's got great range. Again, he's a guy who ran a 4.4, 4.47 40. He's very talented. He played in that Georgia defense, which tells you he had to do a lot. Again, they play 1 high, 2 high, man coverage. He's another guy that can play on all 3 levels. All the guys that I really liked are kind of scheme specific, right? So there's guys who are better tacklers, maybe. There's guys who are better at the 1 high hat, but there's very few guys. These 3 guys are really, really good. I will say Bullard is the best cover guy in the safety position. I believe of all the safeties, he's the guy who can cover more receivers, tight ends than the other guys. Again, very physical. I would say the only knock on him is that can his size at 198, can his body handle it? Because he plays like if he's 220. So very talented guy who does a lot of things. Another good fit for Jim Schwartz. Yeah,
and we know Andrew Berry and the Browns like those SEC guys and the Power Conference guys as well. All right, the third guy that we'll look at, a little bit bigger, Cole Bishop, 6'2", 206 pounds from Utah. What do you see with him?
So this guy's going to be around on day 3, so you're going to see him right down the line of scrimmage here making a play on the running back. This guy's more of a Grant Delpit. This guy is a physical football player. So now you're going to see him. He's going to run the alley here. You're going to see him coming from the secondary, and he's going to make a good tackle again. Then you're going to see him play. Utah plays a pretty interesting coverage here where they're going to play a 2-man, but the 2 safeties are in charge of the middle, those things like drags and RPOs. So again, playing on the line of scrimmage very, very well, tackles very well in space. This guy likes to get down. He can play deep, but for me, this is one of the top guys down inside the box. So this is a guy who could really be successful. And then again, they play this too shallow, I like to call it, where they're taking away the middle routes, a little bit different than what you see with the 2 safeties deep all the time. Just a really knowledgeable guy, super physical, runs a 4.4, believes in himself. I really like the fact that he's got incredible short area quickness. He's really, really good at the combine. So, he's a guy who had a 4.45 speed. He had a 39-inch vertical leap and a 124-inch broad jump. And then what I really like is his 1.52 split in the 10-yard split, which tells you how explosive he is. So just a guy, super athlete, football player. Again, I'm a big Kyle Whittingham fan out of Utah. These kids who play at Utah are tough and they know how to play football. And I like kids who look past the measurables. Even though he's got great measurables, I like football players. And this guy and the other 2 are football players first.
The other thing that jumps out, all of the guys that you talked about, all 3 of them, tackling in space. And again, they're going to be asked to do that a significant amount in Jim Schwartz defense.
There are a few positions in football in the NFL, and having the opportunity to break down most of the NFL at this point after a number of years, there are very few safeties that have to do what a Jim Schwartz safety does. So they have to play deep. They have to play at that second level. They have to be able to tackle. They have to be able to blitz from multiple spots. They have to cover multiple people. It's really a dynamic spot. And if you don't play it well, you get exposed. And in the NFL, they expose you. And I think what the Browns are looking for is a guy who can do all these things. These 3 guys can really do all these 3 things. I think Tyler Nubin is the most well-rounded guy. I think Bullard covers the best. And I think that Cole Bishop is just such a good football player. So all 3 guys that'll be around days 2 and 3, all really good football players that would fit good with Jim Schwartz.
You mentioned the versatility. That seems to scream Grant Delpit to me. Is that kind of what they're looking for, Grant Delpit, the next version of?
Well, it's funny because Delpit, so they like to keep Delpit down in the box more than they like to keep Thornhill, but they do have to play deep. Delpit has been deep a bunch, so I think what Delpit does is they play to his strengths. I think Delpit is a special talent. I really thought he was going to have a breakout year like he did, just because Schwartz is going to play to his strengths. And Delpit can play deep, but Delpit's that second level guy now. So Thornhill's kind of become more of the guy who's deep. Rodney McLeod will be the guy who plays both. They like to keep Delpit down in that box because of his physicality, his ability to recognize plays. And there's some guys who just know how to play football and have a feel and have a sixth sense and know what they're doing. And Delpit's one of those guys. And I think these three guys are kind of like that. The guy who reminds me the most of Delpit would be the Cole Bishop kid. He is a big physical kid who likes to play down in the box, where I think Tyler Nubin can do a little bit of both.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland breaking down the safeties that the Browns might be looking at in the upcoming NFL draft. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's welcome in Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Brad, I know you wrote an article, just the collection of football minds, trying to change the Browns offense and your early impressions of it.
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting thing. Like, I kind of wish if you could be a fly on a wall, like, it would be a really interesting thing to take in, right? So if you kind of dive into the personalities and the backgrounds of these guys, you know, there's a lot of similarities philosophy-wise between Stefanski and Dorsey. Not so much schematically, but, you know, game philosophy. And you have them kind of overseeing this and pulling stuff out of your two college coaches, who Tommy Rees and Nick Charlton. Now, Charlton, you know, really brings expertise in like, you know, motion and window dressing and things like that, something they really need to add, as does Andy Dickerson, as far as pairing that motion with the run game. It's really interesting when you dive into the background. You wouldn't think this for the kind of offense that we're led to believe they're probably heading more shotgun, more spread. I will say they all have a background in RPO, Dave, but heavy usage of RPO. But they're run-first guys. Reese is a run-first guy. Charlton's a run-first guy. They believe in that heavily. So that's interesting. And it's just, you know, this collaboration of minds that they kind of hinted at the Combine when Stefanski spoke. And I just kind of thought about, you know, at the end of the season, he always talks about, well, we're still pulling it all apart, you know, and looking at it. Well, now they're kind of putting it back together, but they have a whole different group of minds, different expertises that can come together and create this offense. And it's exciting. I think it's exciting, and I'm anxious to see what it's going to look like on the other side, Dave.
Yeah, I am too. And when I thought about it last year, because I expected the offense to change last year, but, you know, week 1, Monsoon. Week 2, Nick Chubb goes down. Week 3, you beat up the Titans, and then Deshaun Watson gets banged. So I don't think we saw that offense evolve a season ago the way I think they planned on it evolving.
No, they were kind of forced back into it out of necessity, into what what Stefanski is more comfortable with, right? And I give him credit this year. I kind of wrote about this before in a prior article with no half measures, right? Like there was going to be no excuses this year. There's no choice but to change when you turn over the whole staff and they all are pointed in one direction, right? Hopefully they're moving in lockstep and they all bring something different. But, there's no going back from this, right, to what AVP is comfortable with or what their entire staff was comfortable with at that point, So you got to give him credit because he took some heat for some of those decisions. They were difficult decisions with guys that he had relationships for a long time in the league with, but decisions that he felt needed to be made if they wanted to achieve real change, and I think that's where they're at right now.
So I know you also wrote an article, things you think you know about the Browns. Let's touch on a couple of those topics. You had Elijah Moore's role with the Browns, and then the impact of the emergency quarterback rule change.
Yeah, so with Elijah Moore, I've written about it a couple times, and it keeps kind of changing a little bit with the addition of Judy, the extension of Judy, Cooper's rumored extension, right? It kind of sounds like Moore might be the odd man out. But I wouldn't rush to judgment there because I had high expectations for him last year. And I thought he was misused early in the year when they were kind of trying to feel out that new offense. They used him in a bunch of gadget stuff when he's really better on the outside, running routes and creating separation that way with his speed. He's pretty good that way. He works really, really hard at his craft. I expect him to be a big part of this. Like I still have high expectations for him. My expectations haven't fallen off. I don't expect 1,000 yards or anything, but I think to say that he won't be a part of this wide receiver group going forward is premature. I think that he very well could earn his keep this year. I like what he brings to the team and the direction they're going. He fits.
Yeah, and then, the emergency quarterback rule, that might necessitate an additional quarterback that you keep.
It's interesting, right? Like, so the what I wrote about is it's not going to really impact the Browns roster. Like, they're still going to have to carry 3 quarterbacks despite this change in rule because of DTR, right? Unless he's fallen out of favor, and I don't see that as the case here, Dave, they are going to have to keep him on the roster to protect him, right? He would have to clear waivers to get to the practice squad, and I don't even think he could do that, and then he can sign someplace else to another roster once he's on the practice squad. So I still think they end up carrying 3 quarterbacks on the 53.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me, and I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way, if Huntley makes it to the practice squad or something along those lines.
Yep.
That might be wishful thinking, but it'll be interesting to see what they do game day with that emergency quarterback rule.
I believe Huntley has enough vested years that he doesn't have to clear waivers, so it would be strictly his decision to go to the practice squad. So if they can get buy-in there, and he feels like now why Huntley is accepting a 4-string role, that's something that's hard to explain, right? That's kind of the $1 million question there. But either way, it's easier to get him there if he wants to stay in Cleveland than it is to get DTR to the practice squad.
So this is from Burning Questions from the Orange and Brown Report. Do you think the Browns should try to trade for another wide receiver?
I don't think Andrew Berry will ever not pick up the phone and call and check on a price on a guy. I always think he will do that. He will always do his due diligence. Now, does it make a lot of sense to trade for somebody at this point? Like the big names that are out there? Probably not, because you're probably blocking off Tillman at some point from any development that you hope to have, and you probably like to take another swing in the draft on a guy that's maybe on a cheaper deal. That's a lot of if you trade for an Ayuk or a big name like that, you're gonna have to turn around and give them a big extension as well. So once again, you're sinking a ton of money. The only way I think that it would work is if for some reason it was a guy like Ayuk, and you see him as the replacement to Cooper, as a younger version of him. which I think that's the only way it would really work with a big name trade.
All right, this from Mike Clay, 2024 unit grades for the Browns. A lot of colors and numbers there. Bottom line is he has the Browns defense ranked number 1, the Browns offense 15th. Overall, the Browns, as you can see, are 3rd behind the Chiefs and the 49ers. You look at it, they grade high at offensive line, grade pretty high at tight end, wide receivers, below. And the biggest questions they have, running back and quarterback, 1.1, 1.5. Questions, it's fair given the way Deshaun Watson has played and Nick Chubb's question when he's going to be back and is he going to be the Nick Chubb? If those two are answered pretty emphatically, they move way up the food chain.
Yeah, it's a lot of green all of a sudden there, all the way across. Listen, I wonder if this was before Deontay Foreman was signed.
It was before Foreman.
Yeah, so I think that number probably changes a little bit when you bring in a guy like him, because I look at their running back group as adequate to good. They've got a wide variety of backs that can do different things and kind of fill Chubb's role and you can never really fill Nick Chubb's role, but fill his carries and his duty as a bell cow running back by committee. And then hopefully he comes back at some point this year. And of course, there is always going to be that question at quarterback until they see it, until the national media sees it. That's what it's going to be, and that's fair, I think.
All right, before we go to break, ranking NFL teams by how desperately they need to have a great 2024 NFL draft. This from Total Pro Sports. Number 1, so they need a great draft, Cowboys. Number 2, the Bears. Number 3, the Giants. Number 29 on the list is the Browns. The only teams behind them, the Dolphins, the Texans, and the Chiefs. Browns managed to have a good season, even though they suffered a lot of major injuries to key pieces. They have a talented roster and have addressed the need in free agency at wide receiver, was actually a trade, and linebacker, so you'd expect the Browns to continue to look to build depth for 2024 in the draft. And that's absolutely fair. They have nothing is glaring, so you look at a guy that you think can play a number of years in the league during the draft.
Yeah, so as far as the draft goes, they have really checked all the boxes, right? In preparation for this, they've opened up some flexibility as far as what they want to do. With their draft picks this year, Barry really aggressively took care of anything. The only position on the roster I don't see filled is like tight end 3, and that's pretty obscure when you're talking about depth there. So that's a good sign, yeah.
Without question. Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report and the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast now. I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about the draft, a little bit about Jameis Winston. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Holy Buckeye! You are looking live at the new #1 sports card show in Cleveland.
Don't miss the Great Lakes Collectors Convention presented by Grady Sports Cards, where the passions of sports fans and collectors collide. April 5th through the 7th at the Independence Fieldhouse. Hundreds of tables of ball card bliss, card show live theater, celebrity appearances, kid-friendly games, ComC Consignment Center, and so much more. Great cards, great location, great show. For more information, visit GradySportsCards.com.
We continue talking Browns with Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report and the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Miles Simmons on Pro Football Talk, NBC Sports. What he likes about Jameis Winston as the Browns' backup quarterback.
I think Jameis Winston is a great vibes guy, and I think that he's a really good backup. I think we've already seen that Jameis Winston and Deshaun Watson have hung out. I think Jameis Winston is going to be a great, great support system for Deshaun Watson in that room and perhaps outside that room as well. And I don't think it's anything against Joe Flacco, but I don't know that Joe Flacco would embrace that as well as Jameis Winston. And I say that in part because of the way Joe Flacco responded when he was asked about mentorship when with Anthony Richardson when he was talking to Colts media. So yeah, I feel fine with Jameis Winston as the Browns backup.
Yeah, Brad, the one thing is, by and large, you don't want to have to play the backup quarterback. If you play the backup quarterback, something's gone wrong, most notably injury. But the main thing is you're trying to support your starting franchise quarterback any way you can.
Yeah, Winston, pardon me, Winston Watson is going to get tough there. Winston is pretty ideal for this role, right? Like, he is a guy that has achieved some redemption in his life, right? And I think off the field that plays a role in this, but his always positive vibe, you can tell from his quotes about working with Watson and supporting him and what God wants him to do right now is that. And I mean, this is a guy that's turned around his life and by all accounts is beloved by all teammates. So Watson and Winston working together certainly should achieve a positive, upbeat, healthy environment for Watson to try to find success and try to find just some of his redemption, right, that he's so badly striving for. And it's interesting that compared, as Miles says there very astutely, compared to the amplified pressure that Flacco would have provided, this is a much better situation, I think.
Yeah,
I know a lot of fans aren't going to like that.
But the thing is, drama's going to find its way in there. You don't have to. You don't go looking for it. If you're a team, you just don't go looking for it. Let's turn our attention to the draft. Do you think the Browns should trade down from 54?
I do. If there isn't a guy there that they love, right? You got to really be in love with the guy at 54. Here's the problem. From 85 to, 156, I think, that is a long time to go without a draft pick, Dave. You're going to watch a lot of really good names that you like go off the board in that period from the 3rd to 5th round pick. I think they probably want to move back and add like another top 150 pick, right? That makes a lot of sense to me. Now, if there's a tackle there that they love and see as like the future, there's a couple of names out there that potentially could be there that I think they would take, like that they can start next to DeJuan Jones or envision starting next to DeJuan Jones in 2025 moving forward. Then they might pull the trigger. Or if they really love a receiver there or a linebacker, probably not a linebacker, but you know where I'm going with this. But they really got to love somebody there. But offensive line feels like a big part of this draft. You're going to be in flux from 24 to 25. You have so much money invested in that offensive line. The money's changing to wide receiver and other premium positions on this roster, which means you're going to have to get cheaper there somehow. DeJuan Jones is one step. You're going to need another. You're also don't know how long Bitonio is going to play. These are all things you've got to take into consideration as they move forward here.
Yeah, the one thing that, and I was dead set against it initially, but if you find a running back that drops to you, like somebody had Trey Benson, who some people think is the best running back in this draft. If he's sitting there at 54, he might be too hard to pass up.
It would be very difficult to pass up on him, right? Like none of these, there's some really good backs in this draft, and none of them are going to go in the first round. It's crazy, right? Like it's hard to fathom, but there are some super talented guys, including my favorite Trey Benson, who seems to me like the entire package.
Yeah.
So.
The other thing that you think about, guys that are younger, and when I say younger, 20, 21, and I'm going Estime and Braylon Allen. Those are guys some people have being around in the 4th round. That might be an intriguing thing as well.
Yeah, I don't put it past them to take a running back here. They've got to look forward that way. I still feel the interesting thing, Dave, is I still think, despite how we kind of feel about Jerome Ford and that he probably needs to work on improve on his vision and some other things, I think he's pretty highly thought of in the building. So that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do. But the talent, the high end talent, is super intriguing. And to your point, guys in the 4th round that, in years past feel like maybe would have been 2nd round picks, right? Very intriguing.
When you look at this roster, can you see them adding any veterans still? And if so, where do you think they try to add them?
It depends on the draft, right? So I think they probably have a short list of tight ends, like dual threat tight ends. Obviously, I think they need more depth there. Giovanni Ricci is not a legitimate replacement for Harrison Bryant, and despite the change in offense, they are still going to use a good amount of 12 personnel, in my opinion, just based off of the history of Dorsey's usage of it as well. So, they like the matchups that can bring. There are some really interesting tight end names in this draft. But if they get through and they don't get their guy, I think you're probably looking at them looking towards a veteran tight end who can – they need somebody on the roster who can block and, play the short intermediate pass game, which isn't too hard to find. So I think that's legitimate. And I think they will continue to look always at what's out there. I mean, there are a ton of good players still left on the market, Dave. So in this tertiary phase of free agency, right, after the draft, I still think they will be calling, they will be involved, they'll be looking to churn the bottom of the roster. I mean, they just signed Justin Hardy basically when they had already filled that position with Tony Allen, in my opinion. So, I mean, Allen's probably the odd guy out now, right, or practice squad or whatever, because they found a better option became available. So if a better option becomes available, they'll pull the trigger. So I expect them to remain active in free agency all the way up until, the early parts of the preseason.
So before I let you go, we talked a little bit about wide receiver, and I'm with you. I think that's in play potentially at 54. Or who is a guy that, if he slid a little bit, they would either jump on at 54 or maybe there's somebody like a JOK that they would be willing to even try to go up and get. Is there somebody like that kind of jumps out at you?
At wide receiver, I do think that Malachi Corley is the hot name at 54. He just kind of fits in that range right now. Now that's a moving target there, right? Like where these guys are actually going to land, but he is different than what the Browns have on their wide receiver core, right? So. You hear people say your wide receiver core should be like a basketball team, right? You want a guy that can do point guard stuff. You need a big man. You need a long guy, right? So Corley, I think, brings something they don't have, and that's a really intriguing name. They had Troy Franklin in for a top 30 visit. Very interesting guy, high-end speed. Maybe a little bit of overlap there with some of what they have. So there's 25 receivers in this draft, Dave, that I think can contribute right away. Like the receiver stock in this draft is just crazy. So I don't think they need to reach for somebody. I think they can find somebody at 85 even that they really like and take a swing on. They just haven't had a lot of success with it, and that's where you feel the pressure from like the media and the fans because they've missed a lot at wide receiver. Let's be honest.
Yeah, without question. And you need to get some young guys that you can develop and fill out the roster, without question.
The production from a guy on a rookie contract at wide receiver is gold for a roster build, right? Like, to build a roster the way the Browns want to do it, or any team wants to do it, just a guy that can contribute on that rookie deal is just absolute gold. You got to keep taking swings at it.
Brad Ward, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Brad.
You are the best, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Brad Ward, make sure you check him out. Pages of the Orange and Brown Report. You can also catch, he is the host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE, a special edition show from Greeny's Card Show on Monday. We'll see you then at 4 o'clock on Tuesday on Sports for CLE.